Welcome to Let's Talk About It, a podcast created by students for students. There's a lot of talking going on these days, but oftentimes that talk seems empty. We're searching for real, genuine conversation. We want a space where we're able to talk about everything from the serious to the seemingly mundane and see how faith informs that conversation. Have something on your mind? We do. So let's talk about it. All right, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About It. Not just another episode, but our final in this series, at least, that we're doing, the 10 Commandments in 2020. My name is Pastor Lee. I'm here for you for the 9th and 10th Commandments in 2020. And I have with me, once again,
Emma Keenley,
Aiden, and Adam.
Awesome. So we same crew from the 8th commandment moving into the final commandments here. And so we're so excited for this. And I think at this point, we're kind of we've been talking about phrases don't make any sense, but kicking the dead horse, right? So we know why we're here. Why are we here? What is 10 Commandments of 2020 all about? Adam, what do you got for us? What's this series been about?
I think it's just been a lot about trying to figure out how we can incorporate the 10 Commandments in our life and how they are back in our life now. And so if the other ones in the past, how they relate to what we are doing.
Yeah, totally. And you guys, especially, you guys weren't in the conversation, but as you listen to the conversation unfold. When I was a kid, I hated the 10 Commandments. I thought they were boring. Why are we still talking about them? Things like that. But what I found is they are so relevant. If you listen or are curious about what I just said, go back and listen to the very first episode, listen to the second episode, even about the first commandment. And it really is. It's just kind of crazy to see how we see this partnership, right, of the gospel with the 10 Commandments, to see how they come alive a little bit. Because it's certainly showing us who we are and that we fall short of them so often. But also showing us who God had created us to be when we look at the positive side of things. We have an interesting final two. So we're pairing up, listener, because they're both about this word coveting. So let's have Aiden, if you'll read the 9th commandment, and then Emma, if you'll read the 10th commandment for us. So Aiden, go ahead.
You shall not covet your neighbor's house.
and it's you shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, honestly, it's probably, I just mentioned when I was a kid, I was like, what's the point of 10 Commandments? I think the 9th and 10th ones were what did it for me.
You shall not covet.
Shall not covet. Done.
Boom.
Done. Why do we have to do this? And so, and Luther is one. Again, the way the order of the commandments is always interesting, but 9 and 10 are both about coveting. He splits that one up, whereas I think some traditions group them together into a you shall not covet, and it's simple. But Luther breaks them up. And I think also as a kid, though, like you've walked through 1, 2, 3, and you're in it. 4, you're in it. And then 5, and then 6 is about sex, and you're like, oh, can't talk about that. And then you're checking out for 7, 8, and then 9 and 10. So I think that was a piece of it for me. But when you think of these commandments, what comes to mind? In your mind, what does it mean to not covet?
Adam.
I think it is, actually I know, that it's important to be content with what you have. And one of the things that I've seen, and I had to look it up to make sure I had the right wording, but it's happiness consists of not having much, but in being content with a little.
Well, interesting.
And so it's something that I've just kind of always heard, and it's important for us to not covet and to not take things away from just because you just want to be happy, but finding that happiness in what you have.
Well, and I think that's a big conversation to have. If we're gonna talk about 9 and 10, we need to talk about those two words. So the words content and happiness. All right. So let's talk about it. I mean, when you think of those words, what is let's expand on what Adam's talking about. So when you think about being content or you think about happiness, are those synonyms or are those different things?
I feel like in a way they can be different things, because I feel like you can be content, but you might not be happy. Like you can settle. Like I feel like settling can be another word for content. And you can settle and not necessarily be happy. But you might be happy if you settle. You never know.
I also think that happiness is a reaction. So it's like something good happens in your life, you feel happiness, but contentment's like the decision to try to find happiness and joy despite what's happening around you.
On Sundays, you have to be content with Whataburger over Chick-fil-A.
So and I think that's where I'm kind of landing too, is happiness for me is kind of fleeting a little bit, and that's why I tend to like the word content a little bit more. I think as I did a devotion for the Crew Summer Fun Days, my definition is, what is content? It's being okay with life. It's being okay with where you are no matter what it is. And that means I might not be happy, but I'm cool with it. That's my definition of content. Cool with it. But happiness though scares me a little bit too, because especially as we talk about coveting, the pursuit of happiness, can be pursuing things that aren't actually going to bring contentment and are going to things that ultimately aren't going to make you happy either. And I think it taps in a little bit of what you were saying, Emma. So I like that balance of those two words. I think that's important. Anything else to add to the happiness, contentment conversation? No. Okay. So that's what we think about. So being content, being cool with life, being happy. We got Adam's quote. Adam, read your quote again for us.
Happiness consists not having much, but in being content with a little.
Okay, there you go. So it's talking about stuff. So there's the much, there's the little. I'm trying to break this down in my head, and I like that. So then there's the happiness piece that is where I would say, yeah, that's cool, because that's more of the synonymous happiness and contentment thing. So I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that definition as we go to it. Well, Luther gets a little long worded, like Pastor Lee on his what does this means this week. So Adam, I'll have you. So, we'll have to kind of. So, the first one's about the house. 9th one's about the house. The next one's about the wife, the manservant, the maidservant, the ox, the donkey, anything at all that belongs to your neighbor. So, Adam, I'll have you read the what does this mean for the 9th, and I'll read the one for the 10th then. So, what does it mean to not covet your neighbor's house?
It means that we should fear and love God, so that we do not scheme to get our neighbor's inheritance or house, or get it in a way which only appears right, but help and be of service to him in keeping it.
Okay, so we see these positive pieces. Let's even just talk about this now, right? So these negative pieces and these positive pieces that we're seeing in this one, right? So what are some of the negative things you're not supposed to be doing if you want to honor this?
Don't try and get your neighbor's inheritance or house.
Yeah, and these words scheming, right?
Yeah.
So scheming. There's a little deception, and deceitfulness. Yeah, interesting words. English language, crazy. But then the positive side. So what's the positive sides here?
Try and help them keep it.
Yeah, help them, be in service of it, upkeep it. Yeah, I'll help you with your house instead of get it from you, things like that. It makes me go, between the 9th and 10th commandments, I'm sitting here going, what in the world was going on, right? What kind of a crazy world were they living in?
Somebody was trying to steal his house.
They're trying to steal his house. They're trying to steal his donkey. They're trying to steal his servants. They're trying to steal his wife. Hide your kids. Hide your donkey. Come on. Everybody's getting stolen. All right.
Lee, that's starting to get too old. You can't make that reference.
You can't
anymore.
make that reference? Is that too old?
It's getting too old now.
Man, auto-tuning that was some of the funnest entertainment I've ever had in my life. All right, so what does it mean for not coveting all the rest of your neighbor's stuff? Luther says we should fear and love God so that we do not entice or force away our neighbor's wife, workers, or animals. Sorry. Okay, pause. Okay, so I get the wife and I get the servants. Don't make them so angry they want to leave the guy, right? And again, this is now everybody, 2020. So don't make someone's spouses hate them so they have to leave them. But he adds the word animals. So I'm sitting there don't make Sully hate me. Sully wants to leave me, And listener, I don't think I've talked about Sully. Sully's the best dog in the world. He just so happens to belong to me. He's great. He's awesome. But yeah, don't make Sully so mad he wants to leave me. Man, now family gatherings have a whole new thing. If Sully ever loves someone more than me, I'm like, you are not honoring the 10th commandment, friend. All right. So, but then the positive side of, or turn against them, urge them to stay and do their duty. So when Sully does favor you more than me, friend, if you ever meet my dog Sully, make sure he still loves me more than you at the end of the day. That's how you honor the 10th commandment. That's what I'm learning. All right, so we're having fun with this, right? So anything come to mind with these, or do you guys want to jump into 2020?
I think we could probably just jump in.
Well, I have one thing. The inheritance part, talking about Jacob and Isaac in the Bible.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that whole story, it just came to mind.
Maybe that's why God made sure, Moses, we need to go cover this, because if you go back to your ancestors, we got Jacob and Isaac stealing the inheritance. But the reality is this kind of thing happens. So I laugh that this is so outdated, but the reality is, especially, when someone is dying and leaving something to other people, there's certainly a lot of craziness to try and get it from our scheme or things like that. When in reality, let everybody get what belongs to them, so to speak. So there's all of that happening. So no, good call out on that one for sure. So you guys have actually helped me in our pre-conversation about this to appreciate it a little bit more. With the 9th and 10th commandments, where do you see then the relevance of the 9th and the 10th commandments in 2020?
Well, I know before we started actually recording this podcast, Adam had brought up a topic that I thought was kind of interesting, and how every year's, new phones come out and you have the same phone, and then you're like, wow, that new phone, it takes better pictures, or, it's got more storage, or
Has an extra camera.
yeah, it's got an extra camera. I want that phone. So, you go out and buy it, and then the next year comes around, a new phone comes out, and it's got this and that, and it's better than the one you got, and so you want to go buy it, and then you go get it. And it's kind of like that thing of coveting, because you want that new thing that's better than the one you already got.
Well, and it's interesting too then, because like I'm sitting here going, okay, this is super relevant to that word contentment, right? You're not content with what you have, and so you want something better. So I'm actually interested more in the coveting conversation, because do you see this or not? Like, so do you see where someone else has a better phone than you, but maybe like a new phone came out, so you convince them to somehow sell you their phone and they get a better one? Like that to me, that's coveting, right? You're convincing someone else to not like what they have so you can benefit from it, rather than just, I want that. Like, and I'm going to do anything to get that. So there's a level of again, I think we talked a little bit in the 7th commandment about this with stealing. Thou shalt not steal. There's a level of this is certain at play. There's a little like evilness to it, because certainly, again, the full expanded version goes, you got to be content with what you got and in your place in life. That's what God calls you to, because ultimately He's in control. He's providing everything, and that's what He's calling you to. But do you see the deceptive side of trying to get other people's stuff these days?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you see it then?
I think especially with like celebrities and like social media influencers, right? You see what they have and you want it, and that's why, like, when you have like the huge like scandals and that kind of stuff, you feed off of that, because if they can't have it, like if you can't afford it, like you want them to lose it, like you want to see them fall from what they've built, and so like you. Not only are you wanting what they have, but you also like want them to have something awful happen to them so that they lose that too.
Sure. So you feel like a level of like being vindicated when somebody falls from grace, so to speak, because you felt like maybe they didn't deserve it, or you didn't want them to have it because you couldn't have it. So when they lose it, it's like, like, or you almost like want them to lose it or help make them lose it in some respect. Cool.
What are you thinking, Adam?
Nothing. Right
Being
now.
a listener
Well,
again?
so
Being
what do
a
you think about
listener.
the covenant? Yeah, it is funny. We were talking about some. Anyways, I was gonna make a super nerdy reference. I won't do it. I will refrain, because Adam quote said, "Yeah, if you do that, I'll be a listener," because I have nothing to offer to the conversation. So, anyways, I won't make any nerdy references to any of this stuff. But it's an interesting conversation though. The difference between being content and the evil covet piece. So, like, actually, I remember as a kid, like I'm talking like elementary age kid. Like, I talked in the 7th one about my little brother and the Pokemon card, right? So go back and listen to that one. But I also think there was a level of video game stuff. So like you were trying to convince your friend they didn't want it anymore, they could just give it to you or something like that. Like I remember those kind of conversations happening with friends of, no, you're good, you spend too much time with that, so you just want to give it to me. And they're like, okay, I guess so. Like, or you trick them out of that. Crazy dealings down there in Georgia as a little kid, apparently. So what else? I mean, when it comes to that contentment, though, and that envy, so the new phone piece, but what else is there? I mean, what else are you seeing in 2020?
Well, we were also talking about movies. What were some movies that you had found?
Those are my nerd conversations.
Those are the nerds.
So,
So we're not talking about movies now.
but what you're saying is that movies, celebrities, certain things like that try and get us to want things. Well,
Yeah.
you guys were talking about TikTok. I didn't know anything about the dark places of TikTok that make you covet.
Huh.
What are these ones?
There's definitely like the trend of like Amazon finds on TikTok. So they show you like a new video every day of like what they found on Amazon, right? Like, or what steals they found at Target. And because they are an influencer and they have like their life together, you're like, oh,
influencer.
if I
Keyword.
get
Let's
that,
come back to that. All right, so keep going.
if I have that, like I'll have that life put together like they have. So yeah.
2020 influencer is a word for 2020. Was it beforehand? Like, was it last year? Did we know that word a year ago?
Yeah, I think it's been a big thing for like YouTube and stuff like that.
Okay,
yeah,
but
that's
unpack that in this conversation.
What, YouTube?
Influencers
Oh,
and coveting
influencers.
and contentment and things like that.
Well, it's kind of interesting how a lot of these people come to be influencers. They like one of the most popular ones, Charlie D'Amelio. She just started off by dancing, and now she is one of the most well-known people in our time. It's kind of crazy.
And that's fascinating because I have no idea who you just said.
I know.
Charlie D'Amelio. I would have guessed it was a dude first. And
No.
then you said she dances.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh.
She is what, 16 or 17?
Probably.
I think she's like 16 or 17, and she's one of the most well-known people right now.
And she's known as an influencer. So
Yeah.
what does she influence you to do?
Dance.
To dance? That's it?
That's it. 9
Not
million,
to buy anything,
9
not to
million
do anything
likes
else?
on a video just to dance.
I mean, is it like an America's Got Talent type dance, or is it like...
No, it's just like little dances to songs.
Oh, TikTok. I was going to say, it sounds like TikTok. Okay, but
Yeah.
it's just... Okay. 2020, you're weird. Go away. All right. so, but influencers, like a lot of times they're going to try and get you to buy things or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Or they're gonna get people merch, right? That's a word.
Merch.
That's an annoying word.
Sponsors for like the videos.
Right, exactly. I love this, doing that, things like that. So it's kind of interesting how they're trying to get you to do that kind of thing and be a little envious. And it's not really envious as much as it for you to not be content with who you are and what you have, you know? And so that's what I see a lot of.
Well, that's like all the ads on TV, like in between every, like, and I know a lot of people don't watch like commercials anymore on TV,
yeah.
or just TV in general, but like back in the good old days
Right.
when we used to have to watch all the commercials without having recordings, you know, you'd sit through 5-6 minutes of commercials just straight just to watch a TV show.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Well, you're speaking of back in the day. I mean, I think I've mentioned this before. The Lunchable conversation as a kid, right? I was so envious and I coveted the heck out of those Lunchables because I was number 3 out of 4. My parents weren't paying for no Lunchables. We were getting PB&Js, you know?
Yeah.
That's how it went, you know? But when the friend had like the little, even just the 2 Starburst in there, like, oh, you don't want those. I'll take those. You know,
That's sugar. You don't want it. You don't
Yeah,
want sugar.
exactly. You don't want that sugar. It's not good for you. Or like they felt bad for you because you didn't have a Lunchable. It's so bizarre. Anyways, and now I'm like, actually Lunchables for like the parent that's got to go, you know, so I'm buying this because I don't have the time to, you know, anyway, I don't know. So, but like the coveting, the influencer, making you want things you don't have, making you not be content. What are some other places you're seeing in your world that are trying to make you not be content with what you have?
I think, Instagram. It was one thing that we talked about in one of those sessions at National Youth Gathering was being real. And being real with God, it was the main thing, is a real present God. And in order to be real, that's Instagram is not real. There's filters. It's not posting your life. It's posting that one time that you were with your friends. And so it's best to be realistic and to show that real part in your life.
Yeah, I'm reflecting back 3 years ago. We had a retreat, and I remember it was my first time like I'd heard the term Finsta, right? Are Finsta still a thing?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't think so.
But I won't take credit. I'll be humble. But I called it out. I called it out big time. Because someone explained it to me and I had a talk coming up and I was like, so you're telling me that your real Instagram is where you put your fake stuff, and your Finstagram, which literally means fake Instagram, is where you're real. And they're like, yeah. I was like, do you see how backwards this is? Like, this is ridiculous. You feel like you can be real here, but you feel have to be fake over here. And so Instagram is one of those places. And we talked about a little bit, like we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Well, what does that mean? That means I'm not allowed to go and do my normal life stuff. I'm not allowed to go out. I'm being advised not to, at least. And especially in like April, May, things like that. Like that was the case. But like then there were people, once you were able to explore and things like that, you saw that people were posting, I'm doing this, ha 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 ha. I guess what it felt like. They didn't say ha 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 ha, but that's what you thought they were saying to you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can see how in a pandemic, I feel like social media is going to try and use certain tactics to try and get you to want more things and to want things that you don't have. Kind of like what we were talking about in one of the previous episodes with like the insurance on your tuition if you get sick. Yeah. It was kind of like one of those things where it's like, yeah, let's try and cheat people out of their money, because we want their money.
Right. Well, it's an interesting world in general because, I mean, in that episode I talked about being in ministry, people want to take advantage of you. They know you're struggling. You've never been here before. So please buy this that's going to solve all your problems, you know? And in particularly in a pandemic, it feels very vulnerable to that. But I feel like this was, a year ago, we could have been having this conversation of people trying to sell you stuff that you don't really need or make you want things. But we had the phone conversation. And I think it goes back to this phrase a little bit of never having enough. It feels like, and especially in 2020, but certainly in the last however long, right? Forever. It's America for you, right? It feels like you can never have enough, or that's the message that you're getting. You talked a little bit about the American dream conversation too then, because I just kind of even said, like, in America particularly, it feels that way. Unpack a little bit what you were talking about there.
Yeah, earlier this year I talked to my classmates about this, and some people were just like, well, if you keep working and working and working, one day you'll reach your goal. And it's kind of like, what celebrities ever stopped? What famous person's ever gotten somewhere and been happy with what they've achieved? And so it's kind of like there's always something more you can get, and you'll live a life of like, if you're like feeling incomplete and looking for that next, high or next, something to fill that void that you're not getting from these achievements. So like we talked about how the American dream has changed over the years, and now the goal is to be like famous or have money, and where like way back when it was just to support your family. And so it's kind of like this like toxic idea that like America is selling, that like the more you have, the better off you are and the more happy you'll be. And not content, but happy.
Exactly. And no, that's what even when you started right there, that's what I heard was you're going, when is the celebrity ever happy enough with what they have, right? Content. When do they ever reach that point? And you had another phrase in there, just a little more. If you like country music, you need to go look up a dude named Joe Nichols. Do y'all know Joe Nichols? Have you ever heard that name?
Do not.
He has a song called Just a Little More. Great song. Played it on repeat when I was in high school in the truck. When we had CDs, that was an ancient piece of technology back in the day. Oh, and you were the bee's knees if you had that CD player in your truck too, because that was whoa, crazy. And now it's like, why do you have a CD player in your car?
You just can't have cassette in there.
Oh, cassettes were way but that was my cars because I always drove old cars because I didn't have things, right? So the coveting, back to coveting. So that idea though of chasing it and never having enough, and that's the reality is, and it goes a little bit. All of these commandments are going to tie back to the first commandment. You shall have no other gods. Why? Because if you chase anything else but the God who created you, you're going to find emptiness. It's going to be missing something and things like that. What else are you guys feeling on coveting for this one?
Adam, what do you have? Saw you writing down some notes over there.
I think coveting so going back to being content in the happiness thing, is you covet the social acceptance. And so you covet being able to be that popular person in the friend group, be that person that people come to if they want advice. And so that can even result to gossip, like we talked about in the 8th commandment. And so it's just kind of it's a domino effect.
But it's that contentment and that coveting and doing things in a bad way in order to get what you want or you feel like you need. Yeah, I totally see that.
I think that's really like present in like the sports world too. Like if someone's ahead of you in position, I think chemistry is very important in a lot of sports. And so you can turn to your teammate and say, hey, they're not doing this right, or they're not doing this right, instead of like helping your teammate out and help them, keep that position that they've earned, like the commandment tells us to do. You can like talk to others and kind of spread gossip about them in the court or field, whatever you're doing, and slowly undermine them and go to the coach or talk to other people about it. Instead of earning your position, you can take it away the wrong way from them.
Yeah, and that's kind of fascinating to me about because it's funny what we're doing is as you go down the list, right, they start applying back to each other. So you start with one, and you really don't have to go beyond one, right? Really, every single one of them. Like if you have number 1 down, you won't break any of the other 9. But as you keep going down, they start playing off of each other and relating back to each other. And so especially this one, we've tied back to the 8th commandment. We've tied back to the 7th commandment. We can tie back to the 5th commandment with anger. You can tie back to the 6th commandment with a spouse or a relationship, right? How many people have you seen trick someone out of their girlfriend or boyfriend or something like that? You can go back to 3rd commandment probably and talk about envy with churches and things like that. And what are you chasing down when you go to church? 2nd commandment, that's a harder one to apply, but you can see how this is going, right? So it's just an interesting in general as you come to the close of these commandments, how much they're relating to so many things, but ultimately it's coming down to that point of contentment. And again, tying you all the way back to number 1 and saying, if you have God in his right place, you'll be content. And if you see yourself in the light that God sees you, you'll be content. You'll be fine. If you're loving God and loving your neighbor, you'll ultimately be finding this contentment. So one of the ways we've been trying to wrap up conversations each time, and we're going to have a little bit more time in this one to talk about, this is the end of the series. It's crazy. Hallelujah, right? Some people might be that way. I've enjoyed the time. But one of the ways we've been saying is, what other conversations do you hope people are having as a result of this? Or what other conversations do you hope you're part of as a result of the conversation we just had? So anybody have one that you think, when it comes to the 9th and 10th commandment in this conversation, what are things you hope people are talking about?
I think it's important for both of them, but he doesn't mention anything about being content with your relationship with God.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's something that, although you want to be content with your worldly things and on earth, it's not something that should continue to your faith. And so you should always be striving and wanting more and hungry for more God.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I see what you're saying there. So you're never just cool with where your faith's at. I like that. So it's kind of guarding against the idleness, the laziness piece. But because the reality is, if you have God in the right place, you're always craving it. You're always going after it. You're always chasing it, pursuing it, what it has to say with your life. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good, Adam. That's very knowledgeable. I was gonna say something stupid like don't covet or don't want other people's stuff, but I mean, in reality, all this worldly stuff, it's not going to mean anything at the end of the day. And so we shouldn't let it run our lives, and we shouldn't let it, take away from our relationships with others and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, the world seems very gray. There's not a lot of black and white answers to things. And so we think that these are like ancient laws and they don't apply to things, and they, two things are too complicated now, and, this isn't apply to what's going on in the world. But if you break it down and look at it, God calls us to do, very simple things, and that even though like things do get complicated and that kind of stuff, it's important to just like take a step back and like, look at what you're idolizing in your life, look at what you're viewing in your life, and how your relationship with God at the end of the day is, like where it settles and all that.
No, totally. I'm feeling that too. Well, and this is bringing me back to what do I hope people are talking about? I love everything that you guys have been saying. I hope people are talking about how again, the 10 Commandments are interesting, right? Because on the one side, they show us how often we fall short. Man, we look at this and we look at every single one of them and we break them constantly. We are sinful by nature. We continue to sin, right? And I start with that because the very first episode we talked about that partnership with the gospel, because then all of a sudden it throws you to the feet of Jesus where you need to be. And the reality that you're not perfect. You're not going to be perfect. No matter how hard you try to be perfect, you cannot save yourself. And that's why God did something incredible in Jesus Christ. That he died so that you can have eternal life. And that's the gospel, right? It's not you. It's not us being good. It's not living up to it. But because of that, because he's brought you to life and he's now shown you, when you look at the 10 Commandments, you can see now who he's created you to be. And so I think of that. That is what I hope. I hope people are able to look at it and say, who am I at the end of the day? Who has God created me to be? And maybe I don't have a ton of stuff, but I'm cool with that. I'm content with that because I know who I'm created to be. I don't have enough stuff maybe right now, but maybe later on, God's got different plans for me. Or maybe I have a ton of stuff right now, and God's got big plans to take all that stuff away from me. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, right, one day it is all going to go away, right? When we all have to face the music, we all face that grave. But the other reality, the good news behind that is that that's not the end of the story, right? That Jesus died so that when he comes back, there's that day of resurrection that's so glorious. Now, we've kind of already tapped into this, but as we close out this series, I want to just kind of get your overall takeaways from this is our final episode. So, and we've already started to do this. We've started to connect into bigger themes of loving God and your relationship with God's in the right place. And we certainly have loving your neighbor. So what are your biggest takeaways when you think about the broad picture of the 10 Commandments in 2020?
Adam, what do you think?
Aiden loves throwing people under the bus. If you haven't picked this up,
I do.
As soon as I ask a question, go back and listen to your episodes, and Aiden will go, "Hey, so-and-so, what do you think about that?"
Gives me more time to think.
For sure. Well, what do you think?
It gives me less time to think.
Emma, you were tapping into it a little bit too. Adam, you were tapping into it with the bigger conversation about what's the point. 10 Commandments in 2020, what are you thinking about as you leave this room today?
I think it's just so how this was in the Bible so long ago, and how it still can be pointed to a direction in our lives today, in this world today, in this so corrupt world, that it's still just this developed world. It still has a part, and it still can be a part, and it still will always be a part.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about, like, it's easy to pick and choose what to follow in life, right? Like, it doesn't say, like, don't covet your friends' stuff. And it's really easy to, like, overlook certain issues in the world because, oh, your friend's doing it. Doesn't, you love them, so, don't confront them about it. But if it's your enemy doing it, like, that's okay. Like, you need to call them out on it. But all these things, all the commandments talk about everybody, your neighbor, and so it's almost forces you to, like, view everyone the same way and approach everyone the same way, no matter what the background is or who they are to you, and holding each other accountable. So it's kind of like makes you, like, think about, who in your life are you letting slide? If it's yourself, if it's, a friend, or if it's an enemy. So
I think that a lot of people, when they look at the Ten Commandments, they see it as a negative. They see it as rules that they have to follow, that they're being told that were made way too long ago that aren't relevant. And kind of like what Adam said, there's a lot of relevance to what's going on in these. And they were obviously written by a pretty smart guy. But I think that in all of this, I think that it shows a lot of hope for 2020. And obviously we're towards the end of 2020, almost going into 2021. It shows a lot of hope for the future, and it's just one of those things where it's like it's been around for so long, and it's been a part of culture for so long, whether or not you believe it or not. It's there, and it's ingrained in every last one of our hearts, and so just seeing that. The positive and the negative sides, they show that we can better ourselves, mm-hmm. and that we can have just a better place for us until we make it to our end place.
Totally. And I think the word that's coming to mind from hearing from all three of you too is the word perspective. And I think, and I didn't plan this, listener, I really didn't, but I think that is really a good word to summarize the series that we've been into is perspective, because we're looking at our world, and how are you going to look at it? I mean, it depends on what your perspective is, where you're standing. So if you're looking at this world and wanting it to be pessimistic, or looking at it through the eyes of your social media, your Instagrams, your TikToks, your news stations, your parents' eyes, your parents' conversations, then that's going to be a different one than you're looking through God's eyes. And so as we start to look through God's eyes, what is it helping us to see? On the one hand, right, I think we see our neighbor, like no doubt about it, which stands in stark contrast to how the world wants you to see your world, and that is you. The world wants you to see just you. It's all about you. It's all about me. Like we joke about it, it becomes so cliche almost, but it's so true. How often we're pointed to ourselves and only care about you. But ultimately, too, I hope what this series has done is not. I mean, I hope it has pointed you toward your neighbor. Don't get me wrong on that. I hope it has pointed you a little bit of your perspective away from yourself, in a sense, right? Because that's one of the temptations of the Ten Commandments is, now I just need to be good, and that's great. And the reality is, again, God says you're going to fall short, so there's that at play. Ultimately, what I hope it does is it helps you to point your perspective towards God, the God who made you, the God who made your neighbor, the God who laid out a plan for you. And even when that plan fell short, right, as sin came into this world, and as we all fall short, there's still an even bigger plan at play. And that's the God who has changed everything for each and every one of us. And there may be some people out there listening that say, well, I've heard these 10 commandments. I've heard Christians talk about this, and that God wants nothing to do with me. That is not the case. And I hope that you've heard that God loves you so much that he sent his son to die for you so that you can be brought out of death and into life. Because the temptation, and I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, the temptation is God came so that I would stop being a bad person and become a good person. And the reality is that's not even close. God came so that he could bring you out of death, the things that are killing you, and bring you into life. So guys, I hope you have enjoyed this series. I hope you enjoyed this time together. I hope you're having more conversations. I hope you're talking about things. I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely send us your questions. Again, we'll try and do a Q&A by the end of this thing. I want to thank Adam. I want to thank Aiden. I want to thank Emma. I want to thank Clayton. I want to thank Noah. I want to thank Arleah for joining us on this series, this leg of the series, and Let's Talk About It. Excited for whatever comes next, and I want to just thank you so much for joining us on this ride. Hope you guys had a great time and enjoyed your journey with Let's Talk About It. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk About It. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to give us a follow. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, the Trinity Klein app, or both Instagram and YouTube at TK Crew Students. Have a topic in mind you'd like us to use as a theme? Let us know. Let's talk about it. We'll see you next time.